Hey everyone, welcome to the Higher Alignment Podcast. I'm your host, Minh-Thu, and I'm an executive coach focused on helping people heal their burnout and reconnect to their purpose through self-mastery. I'm a recovering perfectionist and control freak who spent too many years living overwhelmed and exhausted. Now I show executives how to identify their blind spots and use this to propel them on their journey to finding more fulfillment and freedom without burning out. If you've been feeling lost and disconnected in life, book a complimentary connection call to discuss how we can get you back on the path of self-mastery and living a life that feels successful on your terms. Go to higheralignmentconsulting.com/program to book your call, and we'll see you on the other side. In today's episode, I'm interviewing Michelle Joy King, a conscious leadership advisor and neurosomatic executive coach. Michelle's mission is to reshape corporate America through the Vital Core method, a unique approach that combines innovative strategies like nervous system mapping with tailored team building solutions. She has 2 decades of experience in HR, and she believes in meeting each organization where they're at, accelerating their trajectory towards success, all while prioritizing their well-being and growth of their teams. Michelle is here to breathe new life into corporate cultures, fostering conscious leadership and high-performing teams. I'm so excited for you guys to listen to this episode with me and Michelle today because we talk about vulnerability and the impact it can have on an organization and the impact it can have on both your personal and professional life. So with that being said, let's get to the episode. Welcome to another episode of the Higher Alignment Podcast, everyone. And I'm so excited because I have a very special guest with me today, Michelle Joy King. Welcome, Michelle. I'm so excited we finally got to make this happen.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I want to just kind of dive into it right away here because I want to provide as much value to our audience as possible. And I know you come with a wealth of knowledge from the executive space and just obviously helping shape leadership in a different perspective than what we're used to as far as hustle culture and just, hit your head against the pavement until you kind of make things work. But I wanted to actually start with Forbes released an article last month, which I found really interesting. And it was talking about just burnout and the alarming levels that it's kind of coming to, which we aren't surprised by. But in the article, they reference the fact that the Workforce Institute says managers have a greater impact on someone's mental health than a doctor or a therapist. And it's also saying that currently 36% of managers are more likely to report feeling burnt out, and 24% are actively considering leaving their jobs in the next 6 months, right?
Yes.
Which those are statistics you can't ignore. We obviously know what that costs a company to replace someone in a management position. But what I wanted to ask you about is, obviously the way that's kind of framed is acknowledging the fact that managers have such a huge impact on people, right? It's more than a doctor or a therapist. So there's no doubt about it that there is a large amount of responsibility and accountability in that position. But also, I want to come from a place of not just putting more pressure on the manager, but also looking at if you understand your role comes with that much accountability and responsibility, how are you taking care of yourself in the process to make sure that you can step up and be able to fulfill that role to the best of your ability? And this came up. I had 3 clients back to back yesterday, and in every single session I had, everyone talked about how guilty they feel taking care of themselves.
Yeah.
And I hear this so much amongst executives, business owners, any just high performer period, just that concept of taking care of themselves is so foreign that they don't even know where to start. And then it also comes with guilt. So have you seen that with people you've worked with? And what would you attribute that to?
So I definitely have. I did see that article, and I think we'll come back and touch on the fact that, yes, they're responsible for it, and they're also looking to leave their jobs, right? The pressure of making that happen. I do see that, and I hear it from people. I think that there is, people who are responsible for not just the people beneath them and the people that they're helping to manage, But in a lot of cases, we're also asking them to contribute and do individual contributor work. We're asking them to manage up and lead within the organization and manage large cross-functional projects and those kinds of things. So I can definitely understand the challenges that people are feeling and that kind of guilt of, am I doing a good job at this? And if I take care of myself first, does that mean I'm putting my team after me? And I think that concept of put your mask on first is really important for us to remember here, because you can't give from an empty cup. And so I really encourage leaders to understand that if they step back and they are taking care of themselves and they are doing what they need to do, not only are they giving from a full place, right? A place of like, I'm actually feeling really good and the what I'm giving is important. But as you and I know really well, when your nervous system is dysregulated or when you're in this kind of, energy of stress and fight or flight, our capabilities, our window of what's possible, our strategic and creative thinking is all very narrowed. And so I encourage leaders to really think about the way that they can support their employees is because their nervous systems are regulated and they're feeling better. They see possibility where sometimes their employees don't. They see creative ways for employees to be able to avoid burnout or things that they can do to help support their own systems. But when the manager is there themselves, they're actually not able to see those things as possibility. And so that encouragement and that really helping leaders to understand that this is the actual long-term benefit, both for them personally, but quite honestly, for their employees and the organization, is actually so much greater. They can have so much greater of an impact across the board if they take that time to take care of themselves first.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that because it's that idea of like identifying your blind spots, right? And so obviously when you work with a coach or something like that, or you just have any outside counsel, they can help do that for you. But we don't also attribute the fact that your nervous system, when it's regulated, can help identify blind spots, right? Because when you're in a state of survival all the time, and I find also a lot of executives, people in the type A personality world, most people are kind of motivated from that place of surviving versus thriving, right?
Yeah.
And so when you're in survival mode, though, literally your lens becomes completely different than when you're regulated. So imagine what kind of blind spots, like you just said, could be opened up by just taking care of your own nervous system, not even necessarily needing outside counsel.
Yeah.
Look at what that opens up for yourself if you just learn how to work with that beautiful internal machine that you have.
Yeah. Yeah. I tell leaders all the time, right? I think that there's still, this perception that nervous system regulation or neurosomatic work is somehow woo woo. And there's so much science behind how all of this works. And so, I mean, we could spend a whole episode talking about all of that. But quite honestly, the best thing you can do for yourself is take care of yourself, right? And having that capacity to know and understand that my window is open and I do have this initial um, ability to see things that other people don't because I have slowed down enough to get there. I also think that people see this as like, it's your own internal operating system and it's going whether you want it to or not, right? It is happening whether we're looking at it or thinking about it or trying to regulate it or not. And so this puts us in control of the how we show up, of the what we get to learn, of how we support and do better for ourselves and for our organizations and for our employees. And so this is also our leaders taking responsibility for their own internal operating system and how they show up, just like they would do if they were presenting at an executive meeting or right anything else. They would take that time to prepare, and I'm asking them to take that time to prepare themselves for how to help their employees and how to do those things by taking care of themselves.
Yeah, and I think what's important with that, because again, the word I commonly hear come up when we talk about taking care of yourself is this guilt factor. And while regulating the nervous system is such a key component in that, like you really can't take care of yourself if you don't regulate your nervous system. Like the two go hand in hand, but also a reframe on like I've had to really take people on a journey of understanding where that guilt comes from. And, it always goes back to childhood typically, right? Like we aren't the initial interaction when we come into this world as kids is, okay, I'll be the kid that you want, and you as a parent give me protection and food and safety, right? So it's kind of that exchange from the beginning of having to show up for someone else in exchange for safety, you know what I mean? And so I think as we get older, that carries on into adulthood. And then now when you have these responsibilities and these targets that come up, kind of the only way of knowing how that goes is to self-sacrifice. And when it comes back to pouring back into yourself, it's such a foreign concept for people, and they can't get past that guilt. And I'm wondering if you've ever had to help rewire someone in that perspective, and how you've done that to get them to, like, I think everyone can say out loud, yes, I know I need to take care of myself, but actually integrating that is a whole nother thing, right?
Absolutely is. I definitely have. Some of my clients, I think, it's also figuring out, it's a very individual kind of perspective. It's a very individual way of doing this, right? Some people go to the gym and that's how they start to take care of themselves. Some people, eat differently or spend time with their families or do things like meditation and breath work and other neurosomatic tools. So all of those are great options. For me, it's figuring out, helping them to know and understand first and foremost, what are the things that that pour back into you? What are those things that help you breathe life into your own health and well-being and ability to be kind of feeling that stability and that groundedness? And for each person, that's very unique and very different. And so it's helping them to get reconnected with that. Sometimes when we get busy and we're going all the time, we end up sacrificing those things that we know ultimately give us value and ultimately help us to stay in that grounded place. So let's get back to that and understand, how that's helping you. And then I think the second part of that is when those pieces around guilt come up, it's stepping back to say, where does this come from? But I'm also very focused on how does that show up and why it's there, and what other areas of your life does this show up in, right? And let's talk through how you've been able to overcome it with different things, because let's be honest, a lot of these folks are willing to take the time to spend 4 extra hours at work or work from home at night or get up very early in the morning and work and take a work call. And so my reframe for them, or kind of my question and my challenge is, you're choosing to spend additional discretionary time on things that are going to continue to get you the things that you want, right? That hustle and feeling like you're going to meet your goals and expectations. But what is it about that not willing to do that same thing, not willing to put that same amount of discretionary time and effort into the things that you know are going to help ground you and help you feel better? And
Yeah,
that is a choice. And so people have to step back and really look at why they're willing to make that choice. And I think that hits home for people a lot.
100%. And I love the way you put it, because like the earlier choice, the one that they're currently probably making, willing to stay the extra 4 hours, willing to work on the weekends, et cetera, versus putting that into yourself. Like, at what cost is the first one happening? Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? So it's like the quote unquote skill set of putting extra time and focus and energy is already within you. You're wired to grow and evolve, but the place in which you're putting that is gonna hold a lot of weight as to what the return is for you. And again, the tricky part of that is when you have had some success and you are leading a team at a certain capacity, and you're seeing some material results of operating that way, it's easy to fall into that versus looking at, but what is the internal result? Like, am I actually feeling better through this? Am I more depleted? Am I actually getting grumpier and having less time for the things I love and not connecting with people like I used to? Like, what's the cost associated with that path, right?
Well, and I think the other thing that I have been able to help leaders with, and sometimes you've probably done this as well. It is, let's try it my way for a little while and see if you see a difference. Because I would argue that same 4 hours, whether it's on the night or the weekend, I would argue that if You took that same 4 hours and you spent the first hour meditating, doing breath work, being outside in nature, running, whatever is your thing that helps ground you and gets you to that place. You can get more done in the remaining 3 hours than you got done in the 4 hours you took just doing it. And once leaders actually see that in practice, how it works, because you've opened up that window, because you've opened up the creativity, because you've given your system the break that it needs, and you're moving forward from this very aligned place, you are actually more productive, you feel better, and you're able to get things done faster and easier. And so once leaders have that shift of, wow, I was spending, this 4 hours of additional weekend time or whatever, I can get the same thing done in 3 hours and still meditate and still go for the run that I need to. That is life changing. That is mind shifting for people, but it also really does then help them from that burnout perspective, from that place of like, I can take this time. And I think that guilt starts to go away. I think that people start to feel that and know and understand that they're actually doing this for the benefit of the people around them. Themselves for sure, but we're all not wired to be that selfish, right? We want to help others and we want to support others. And so if we can frame it as you really are helping others by helping yourself, and they can feel that and see it in action, even after a couple of weeks, people come back to me and they are always very appreciative and surprised that there is a way that doesn't involve just spending the 4 hours. It's like, I can actually get more done if I feel good. I'm like, yes, you can. So that recognition and that realization makes a big difference.
100%. And it is like, I'm sure for you as it is for me, it's the most fulfilling thing when you see someone like have that aha moment, like, oh my gosh, like it worked. It worked. You know what I mean? When they've been like just gripping their hands so tightly for so long around one method, to see that light bulb go off and that shift, and like their shoulders come down and the breath get deeper. Like it's just such an incredible thing to witness someone go through, you know?
Absolutely. I'm grateful for those moments because those are what keep you going, right? It's hard. And when you can see someone have that pivotal shift, it's truly life-changing for them. And if you think about like just going back to the statistics you gave at the beginning, if you have that many people in the management chain who are struggling with burnout, who are struggling with helping their employees, and they're looking for jobs themselves, like they're trying to get out of it, imagine a world in which they feel like less like they have to leave. They don't have that guilt and they have the capabilities and the skills that they need in order to guide themselves and others to a more strategic and aligned place and be able to deliver. All of that feels really good and it boosts all the good things in your body that help you keep going. Like this is a vicious circle of goodness if we can get them there.
100%. And in that same, notion is like there is a responsibility you have when you're a leader. There you can't deny that there is a bigger expectation on you. And I also want to acknowledge that, the idea of working with a coach or even just trying something different is a very vulnerable experience. You know what I mean? Because you're kind of testing the waters, and you're testing the waters as someone who already has a lot of pressure on your shoulders. You're like, I can't the story in their head is, I can't afford to have a mishap or take a wrong step or whatever. But like choosing to try something different, as simple as taking an hour to yourself instead of putting that hour back into the project, can be a very vulnerable experience. But just as you said, like taking that chance on it is what leads to not only growth within yourself, growth within, your organization. But, I want to talk about, because we've kind of had this conversation before about what the importance of vulnerability in a leader is, right? And how impactful that is. Because, I have worked for people who were really great at what they did, but that lack of vulnerability is where the connection in the relationship got, there was a ceiling on it, right? Because they didn't want to show weakness. They wanted to stay focused on the target and what we had to get done. And any idea of showing vulnerability was just kind of seen as like almost like entitlement. I felt like they kind of looked at it. But then also, I would see these, and I'm referring, this is male leadership, which sometimes they can, have a little bit tougher time with the emotional part. But like, I also saw the other side of it where it's like when they withheld their vulnerability so much and you could see they were going through something, it ended up in an emotional outburst or, a big argument in the boardroom, and it would come out so explosively because they were suppressing how what was actually going on within them so much. But then it came out in this way that wasn't necessarily the healthiest for the organization or the team. And just maybe if you could just touch on like how important or what you've seen as far as vulnerability in the workplace and among leadership, just how impactful it is.
Absolutely. And this one hits very near and dear to my heart because if you'd have asked me 10 years ago, I would have said, that's the V word. I don't do it. That's a no for me. But I grew up, right? I came up through corporate in a world, especially as a woman who was ambitious and, growing and young, feeling like vulnerability was a weakness. If I showed that I couldn't do something, that I was already having to fight above and beyond than, some of my other colleagues who went to better schools or did better things. And so there was this like inability and desire to hold anything in that wasn't, I'm perfect, I got this, no problem, right? That leads to that hustle culture of just I can't say this is too much, or I don't know what to do. And so I grew up that way. And two things. First and foremost, and kind of how myself and probably many people get into this work is then I ended up in burnout, right? I ended up with all of these things going on in my body and like not listening and doing those things. And so that was a big wake up call for me. And, had a mentor who really had to work with me to get me to a place to understand that vulnerability creates connection. Every single person on this planet has been in a situation where they were given something and they didn't know how they were going to get it done. They didn't know if they had the skill set to do it. They didn't know if they had the time. They were nervous about making it happen, right? This is just one example. Those people, especially as leaders who are able to say, this is hard and I have a lot going on in my life and I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this, but I'm going to trust the team and we're all going to lean in. We're going to do this together. The camaraderie that creates and that connection to say, wow, my boss who maybe leads these giant teams, who's been doing this for 30 years, still has imposter syndrome or still has these nerves or concerns about their ability to deliver on something. And the connection that gets created there is not something you can manufacture, and it's not something you can recreate. And so there, I was just having this conversation with a senior executive at an organization yesterday. We were talking about vulnerability. And the thing that ultimately helps build trust is vulnerability. If I can say to you, I have something going on at home and it's impacting my time, and I can trust you with that, and you're going to help then support me to meet whatever goal or expectation we have on us. The ability for us to then feel more connected is so much stronger. And the foundation for all high-performing teams and for all high-performing individuals is trust. Right? If you think about a really strong individual contributor, they trust themselves implicitly to get things done. If you think about high-performing teams, the most high-performing teams in the world, Navy SEALs, Blue Angels, like people like that, trust is the foundation of them being able to live and deliver at the level that they do. And so because vulnerability builds so much trust with each other, to be like, I'm human too. I'm scared. I'm nervous about this. And we're in it together and we're going to work together to make it happen. And we're going to do the very best that we can. And I've got your back regardless. That creative kind of connection is something that you cannot get in a world where you pretend as if everything's okay. And it is a double-edged sword because it requires trust on your part too, that I'm going to share something with you and you're not going to hold it against me, or you're not going to see me differently. And so I get and really understand, and again, like can so deeply relate to leaders who struggle with vulnerability because it was so ingrained in me and because I came from that place. But I cannot tell you the connections that I have now developed with people that I work with, people that I've led for years that have become these long term, very, very important relationships in my life because I was willing to lean into that vulnerability. And there's just no substitute for it. You can't manufacture it. You can't push it or pull it from someone, right? You really do have to openly share and create that connection with someone to say we're not so different. I could be, I could be an executive and you could be a brand new, early career individual. But if we both share this trait of being nervous when I'm being given a big project and I can share that with you, despite the fact that there might be 5 layers in between us, it creates this connection of you are not so different than me. We are in this together and we're going to do it together. And that connection is what ends up making teams great. It's what ends up making projects get delivered, right? It really and truly is a superpower. And so it's a journey. This is not something you can solve overnight, right? A lot of us who really struggled with it and have struggled with it for years, I still struggle with it. When I get in go, go, go mode, I definitely can feel that part shutting down, and it has to be intentional and extremely kind of connected and right forefront in my mind of, am I sharing all the pieces that are going to help the people around me show up better? And that takes intentionality and it takes focus and it takes confidence and it takes building that up in leaders to be able to get there. But the benefit, again, it's one of those things like once you've done it a few times and you create that connection and you create that trust with people, it gets easier because you can see how valuable it is and how fast it accelerates things.
100%. And like, I love everything you said. Again, just about people really grasping the fact that like vulnerability is required for high performance, like
Yeah.
because trust is required for high performance. And so it's not this aspect of weakness, it's this aspect of strength. And when you think about it, vulnerability is kind of the harder thing for most of us. So
Yeah.
if you're going the path that's less traveled, again, what can that open up? What blind spots are you relieving by taking this, you know? Also, just like what you said, like it's also this, I guess, kind of gamble you're taking if you haven't done it before, but once you have, then you see the impact of it, of sharing, like you said, like, look, this is a big project, this is a big target, and I am also a little bit like, this is a stretch. However, I'm acknowledging my real fear about this. I'm accepting that I have it, but I'm also still committed to making it happen. You know
Yes.
what I mean? I think as humans, what happens is, and especially when you're in a leadership position, we think that accept or acknowledging our fears, our doubts, our insecurities somehow means we're giving in to them or that we're giving up by acknowledging them,
Yeah.
when really it's actually just embracing the moment of being human, because we all know when we repress stuff, they don't go anywhere. Like just because you're choosing not to acknowledge it doesn't mean it's not still sitting underneath the rug and it's this massive bump and everyone can probably see it, even though you're trying not to bring it to the surface, you know? Like what do they say? What you sup- what you repress, what's the saying?
Yes.
It's okay.
What you resist persists.
There you go. What you resist persists. Exactly.
It will
And
keep
so
coming back.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But again, when we can just understand that if we just acknowledge the fear, acknowledge the insecurity, and just let it breathe for a moment, but then we say, okay, cool, but I'm committed to figuring this out with you, with our team. We're going to keep going till we find an answer. Like, again, just what kind of battery does that not only put in yourself, but also in your people to be like, okay, cool. We don't know quite what's going to happen, but we're going to figure it out together. And now we're more invested and we're more bought in and we're more, connected to accepting that we don't know, but we're going to figure it out, you know? Okay, if you've been feeling exhausted and overwhelmed with your day to day life and you're not sure whether you're actually burnt out or not, go take my free quiz called Is My Burnout Fixable? It only takes 1 to 2 minutes, but it will give you an assessment on what level of burnout you're currently experiencing and also provide you some tips you can start to implement right away to help improve your current state. So go to higheralignmentconsulting.scoreapp.com to take the quiz and then DM me or tag me with your results. All right, guys, back to the episode.
Well, and I mean, I just keep tying it back to the statistics you said at the beginning because I think it's so impactful. If I'm in that place of like, I'm burnt out, and I know you as a leader support taking care of yourself and doing those things, right? I'm going to come to you and I'm going to say, I need some support. I need some help here. And this feels very vulnerable. But wouldn't we rather that they did that so that we can help and support them, and then they don't end up in a situation where they're out on leave, where they're doing all of these other things? Like those opportunities, us saying, hey, I've gotten to a place of burnout before and I know what it looks like and I know how hard it is, and so I take this time to take care of myself, and I am encouraging you and I'm asking you to do the same. Those statistics around burnout for managers and employees go down. People wanting to leave their jobs go down, right? This is all that ability for us to affect the workforce in so many ways. And so sharing those things becomes incredibly important. And like I said, that trust that you build with people is just not something you can build in any other way than just helping people see you as human, see you as a person who has the fears and the feelings. But like you said, we're going to push through and do it anyway, and we're going to make it happen. That becomes very powerful.
And I love that you use the word opportunity because I've been saying that a lot lately. Like burnout is an opportunity. Yeah, it feels like crap in the moment. We know that. But all that's happening is something within you is disconnected, which has gotten you to this point that we need to reevaluate. But it's an opportunity for you to shift and pivot and get to the next level, because what got you to point A is not what's going to get you to point B, right?
Yeah.
So when burnout comes up, it's such a beautiful opportunity to look within, figure out what needs to be adjusted. And then again, okay, so now we can pivot and move forward in a different way where we can have an even stronger connection. We can have an even stronger motivating factor. Like just it opens up the door of so much if you actually take the time to look at it, where some people won't. What commonly happens is people get burnt out and then they blame it on all the exterior things. My boss sucks, my job sucks, everything sucks except me, right? But I'm feeling the repercussions of everything sucking around me.
Yeah.
And then we don't actually take the opportunity for what it is to be like, let me be vulnerable, let me acknowledge what's happening, let me express this to my team or whoever, right? And then let's see how we can pivot. But it's a really huge opportunity if people reframe it that way.
Absolutely. And I would challenge your listeners, like, just I want every person to think about this question. How many of us have been close to burnout in some way, shape, or form? And our answer is change jobs, change relationships, do those things, right? Instead of actually stepping back and saying, hey, this is a me thing. I get to work on this. This is my opportunity to get myself grounded and figure out what I need to do in order to get myself out of this. That blaming of other things causes us to change jobs, change relationships, do all of those other things. And then in retrospect, you look back and you're like, I don't know that that was the actual cause of all the things. Now, in some instances, right, it's a huge motivator and a huge factor in it. But ultimately, we own the responsibility for taking care of ourselves. And so I think sometimes when you put it to leaders that way as well, to say, you wouldn't let your child do this, right? You would reach out your spouse, someone that you love. If you saw them going down this path and not taking care of themselves, we would absolutely step in. We would absolutely want to intervene and give our perspective and try to help support them through it. We've got to be willing to do that for ourselves.
100%. And then how often do you switch the job or you switch the relationship and the same pattern pops up,
Same,
right?
yeah,
Because you haven't addressed what's the root cause. You just jumped from ship to ship to ship, and then the exact same thing pops up.
yeah,
And then some people might continue to blame the partner or the job.
yeah.
But then it's also like, when is it gonna be like, I'm the problem, it's me, right? And also knowing it's you should feel empowering, because guess
Yes,
what? The only thing you have control over is you. So if you know it's a you thing, guess what? That means you can fix it, right?
absolutely. My clients will tell you one of the things that I ask, no matter what the situation is, always, what was your part in this? Because until you can be 100% accountable for your part in how we got to something, regardless of what it is, you don't get the opportunity to blame others. There's always something that is inherent to us, that internal accountability, that radical self accountability. If we can start there, we can actually fix anything, because we're recognizing and acknowledging and being vulnerable enough with ourselves and hopefully with other people to say, I could have done this differently or better. And that would have resulted in something different. Now, it doesn't mean that there are not a lot of other factors that go into something not working, but right, organizations that are really good at appreciating failure and acknowledging it and seeing it have built this self accountability and this radical kind of self reflection to say, we could have done better and here's how. And we don't make it mean you're bad or you're a failure or any of those kinds of things. It really is an opportunity for you to grow and develop, and personally and professionally. And so if we can start to look at accountability and our part in things, we get to the answers faster and we learn faster.
Yeah, there's that V word again, right? Vulnerability. It's just like, so it's so instrumental in development and growth as a human, period. And it brings me to my next question, is like, this has been coming up a lot lately. Just the I've been seeing with a lot of my clients the struggle of vulnerability in the workplace and then vulnerability in their personal life, and how it is the same thing at the end of the day. Vulnerability is just being your authentic self and and feeling comfortable doing it. Really, that's what it is. But it's interesting how a lot of people can feel, I guess, feel more inclined to be vulnerable in the workplace to a certain capacity. But then when it comes to their relationships, when it comes to really exposing kind of more of their heart, because I guess your heart's a little bit more involved if we're talking about an intimate relationship, how they seize up and they almost don't even see the benefit of tapping into that within their personal relationship. It's almost easier to shy away or close themselves off, or and especially when it comes to, I think, vulnerability with what they're going through at work, sharing it at home. And sometimes those lines can get blurred, and I'm sure there are probably some partners that maybe don't support hearing what's going on at work, and that can be hard when you need an outlet away from the office. But it's been interesting navigating with some of my clients, mainly more my male clients, the aspect of navigating their emotions and how to acknowledge them and feel them and be aware of them in a way that's not making them feel like they're weak or they're disconnected from their masculine, but in a way that's showing like, this is actually, by you being able to acknowledge these emotions, it's making you more vulnerable, and that's strengthening your personal relationships and your business relationships. Like, I'm interested, have you seen that happen with some of your clients, or like sometimes the same problem almost happening professionally and personally at the same time?
Absolutely. I tell my clients every relationship in your life is a partnership, right? It is, we get to decide to get into them, to get out of them. You have a partnership with your significant others, you have a partnership with your friends, you have a partnership with co founders and your employer and your boss. So these are all those partnerships that we get to navigate throughout life. And we get the choices to say, how are we going to show up in each of those, right? And really leaning into what are the things that are most important to us and how do we communicate really well. And so I do have a lot of clients who, for example, I have a set of co-founders who we have really vulnerable very hard conversations together because they're growing a business and they've decided to be in business together and growing this multi-million-dollar company and hundreds of employees, like lives on their line, right? And so we have these really great conversations. And then the CEO goes home and is struggling to have the same conversations with his spouse around what he needs or around their family life. And I think some of it is, I feel like this partnership at work where I'm getting paid to do it or where I'm doing these things, or like these are the things I have to do, and the people who are closest to me should just know, or they should be able to read my mind, or they've been with me for 15 years, they know me. And I challenge people to say, just like any relationship, you can work for the same employer for 15 years and still need to have very different conversations and different communication, and get vulnerable in different ways. We've got to do those things in our personal lives as well. And it doesn't mean that it has to be at the same capacity, right? I think there is also that we build trust with the people in those intimate or more intimate relationships in a little bit of a different way. But acknowledging that we still need to do it. We still need to be open and communicate. They cannot read our minds, despite the fact that we would love them to. And even if they know you really well, they also have their own internal stuff going on in their own operating system that they're trying to figure out and navigate and learn and understand. And so I think helping those executives to really see the partnership that they have with the other people in their lives, their friends, their family, their children, and how to share that same vulnerability and that same approach of building trust and building connection and relationship is actually a really beautiful thing to be able to watch and help happen. Because just to our point earlier, right, you can have these very successful relationships if you're willing to build that trust by being vulnerable and talking with the people around you. And why wouldn't we want to do that with the people that we actually, our heart and soul belong to and we love? And I think, it's sometimes not easy. Like you said, when your heart is on the line, that is, there is definitely I think an extra layer of nervousness there, or an extra layer of like getting hurt and, all of that. But I think that that's actually one of those places where if you do it well, you can see the value right away. Like that, there's nothing that builds trust more than saying to your spouse or your partner, I'm really nervous about this thing. And they feel like then they have the capacity to be there to support you. And just like every partnership, they're never 50-50. Some days I need 90% and you're going to give 90, and other days it's a 80-20 and I'm going to give. And if we can remember that vulnerability helps build up to say, hey, today I only have 20% to give. I'm really needing a lot of support. And having that person show up for you and be that support that you need, that actually builds that strong foundation for your relationship to continue to grow. And so helping people to see that. And again, like once you've done it a few times and you've gotten good at it, you can see the connection that it creates.
Yeah, and what I would say honestly, some of the most successful hard exterior people I know are actually the most sensitive.
Yes.
And that's not in a bad way. That's like beautiful, because I think the more quote unquote sensitive you are, it just shows the depth that you have. You know what I mean? And typically, if you are a good leader, that depth exists within you, because you wouldn't be able to have healthy connection if it didn't. And it's no knock to anyone who doesn't, but like people who do want greatness and do want to go, and see a big trajectory that they can go after. Like people who are ambitious typically do have a lot of depth to them. That's why they're motivated in that way. And that usually does come with a lot of sensitivity and a big capacity to feel, not always express, but to feel. And that's one thing I've learned, from some of my clients, is they don't show that they got a lot of emotion going on, but that's not eliminating the fact that they feel it so deeply. And so again, what extra channel is that opening up? What extra like juice are we putting in your back if we could just allow you to express that in a way where you can actually receive the support, just even just the ear to listen and to release some of those things. So it's like, okay, so now we can get the energy moving, and just again, what how could that impact your path even further, right? And so
Yeah. I mean, it's funny that you say this. I was yesterday facilitating a conversation for several executives, and one of the things we started talking about was feedback. And I had two executives who've, been doing this for a very long time, very successful in what they do. And both of them said they've received 360 feedback in their careers that was really, really hard. And so we dug into that, and I wanted them to share with other people in the room. So we had their team. So it was the executive team and then kind of their next layer down. And I asked them to share because um, many people see them as like they're very high up in the organization. They've been doing this for a really long time. And one of the things that was really beautiful to watch during this conversation was they shared that, especially one of them, she's strong female leader. She's amazing at what she does. She's got an amazing team that she's built this relationship with. But about 7 years ago, she got a 360, and she said it was the hardest thing I ever went through. There were a lot of tears, which I've done a ton of 360s for senior executives. There are generally a lot of tears and surprises. But she said, I had to accept that this was the way that people saw me, and this was their experience of me. And I then get to make a choice to say, is this the person that I want to be? And so she had gotten some feedback that she wasn't empathetic and she wasn't listening to people. And knowing her for as long as I have, she is, and having done some thinking style assessments and perspectives, so I know how her brain works. I know all of these other things. She's actually very emotional and empathetic and very sensitive. But she wasn't showing that because she had this layer and this armor she put on to be successful in the things that we needed to do and all that we've talked about today. And so it wasn't until someone, and this was a blind spot for her. She thought she was doing really well. She was growing. She was, climbing the ladder. She was very young and getting promoted and leading teams. But she got this 360 feedback, and she said it was really hard for me. And if no one had told me, I would have kept doing it. And now I sit in the seat with this amazing team around me that I've built. And the people that report to her now were like, what? I don't know that version of you. I've never seen that person. Because she took it so seriously and she really listened to the feedback and heard it, and then said, I need to do something different. That's not the experience I want people to have of me. That's not the leader I want to be. I am incredibly empathetic and very sensitive. And the only way for me to create that connection with the people is to step back and share some of these things and share my drive and share. She was a single mom working really hard trying to raise her kids. And so she said, I was willing to put in the extra time because I was hustling and I wanted the job and I wanted the promotion. And instead, what people were saying is just her lack of connection and lack of empathy and lack of those things that become really important. And so her team was unhappy. And that having that conversation was something life-changing for her. And now she sits in a role where she gets to, we were talking yesterday and she said, I get to create magic moments in people's lives. And I never would have said that 10 or 15 years ago. Like, my job is how do we create these moments where people are connected and loving what they're doing? And so it's a really powerful way to also know that, if you can do that, if you can hear that and you can start to connect with people in a different way, imagine where you can be in 5 years or 10 years and how that changes the people that flock to you and want to work with you and want to be in your sphere and be led by you.
That's such a great story. Like, I literally had a conversation with a client yesterday about how, let's be honest, right now in our society, we have to be respectful of people's feelings, but everyone's scared to say stuff.
Yeah.
Everyone's scared to be canceled. Everyone's scared to offend people
Yeah.
or be casted away out of society or whatever the case is. So we've by whatever means, we've all gotten to this place where we're walking on eggshells most of the time, which that is not conducive to authenticity, vulnerability, any of that, right? But I was saying to a client yesterday, like, these tough conversations are so important because we don't learn from the easy ones. Like, my biggest learning moments have been where someone smacked me in the face with something. I was like, blind spot, didn't realize, like, couldn't believe I showed up this way. Like, you know what I mean? We don't learn when we're constantly being coddled or we aren't being confronted. Like, confrontation is so healthy. It's necessary. It's the resistance we have to experience. Now, there's a way we can do it in a healthy way, have the confrontation. But if we're never being confronted with things, how do we ever expect to grow and pivot? And like you said, like, look how it's completely shifted the trajectory of her career by being confronted with something which was, I'm sure, very vulnerable for her in the moment to experience. But look at what it's opened up for her, right?
I know. It's magical. And again, she was vulnerable and shared this in a room of people who report to her, her boss, right? To say, like, I had to go through that in order to be the leader that I am today. And so embracing that, I think, is just, it's part of the growth, but it really is that it creates this trajectory you don't know that you will be on unless you do it.
100%. Okay, and so there's one more question I'd like to ask you that kind of piggybacks on this, and it's the importance, because I know you, like you said, you've worked with a lot of co-founders and just that dynamic of partnerships, and then also the dynamic of, I believe a healthy partnership means you have to hold the person accountable, right? Like it, and it can be this fine line, whether it's a business partnership or it's a, a personal partnership, whatever the case is, you know, depending how you orient, it can be like, well, I don't want to ruffle their feathers because if I ruffle the feathers, they might not want the partnership anymore. And I'd rather just suppress how I'm actually feeling or what the truth is. And it's so easy to get into that space because we're scared of rejection in whatever capacity, right? But
Yeah.
the strongest partnerships, in my experience and from what I've witnessed, are the ones where they just deliver the facts, they deliver the truth, and they also poke holes in your line of thinking and your feelings. And because I think we can all agree that our thoughts are not truth and our feelings are not facts. Like,
Yeah.
we have literally thousands of thoughts a day, and maybe not thousands of feelings, but a lot of them that can shift on a dime. And if we're constantly relying on those to to dictate our next move, we're falling short. And not that we don't want to pay attention to our feelings. I think that's very important, but we do have to understand that they don't necessarily run the facts of the situation. And so the importance of having a partner that holds you accountable, that pokes holes in your theory in a very like curious way, not in a controlling way, in a very curious way. Well, why do you think that way? Why is that coming up? Has this been a pattern? Like, just talk to me about the importance of that, again, both professionally and personally, and how it's, my belief is that the people that challenge me the most, but do it in a loving way or in a way that's not actually life threatening, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
are the people I value in keeping on my path, because if they're triggering me, they're showing me where I'm not free. And if they're poking holes, it's because they've probably been where I've been, and they're maybe living the life that I want to live or doing the things that I want to do. And so I respect their larger scope of perspective that can just shed some light on where I'm currently at in my path. So maybe just if you could just share your perspective on that.
Yeah, for sure. So yes, those partnerships are incredibly, incredibly important. The strongest growth comes on the other side of discomfort. And so I always tell people, when you're uncomfortable, you got to lean in, because the more you lean in, the good things come on the other side of that discomfort. And so it becomes incredibly important to surround yourself with people who are willing to do that. And just like I talked about earlier, that self accountability, you can only see what you can see. Like, we can do a whole episode on feedback and the Johari window and how you see yourself in your blind spots. But it is a gift for someone to tell you something about yourself that you don't see about yourself. It is a gift for someone who, to your point, may be living the life you want or be headed in the direction you want and have these unique life experiences that you do not yet have, to ask those questions from a place of genuine curiosity to get your brain thinking and give you a unique perspective. If we look at our life view and our ability to see things as if it's a window, right? You can only see from through the window pane if you look behind me, like I can only see this much. What's up here, I can't actually see. And so either I need someone to tell me what's happening up there that I can't see yet, or we're going to discover it together. And there really is this important ability to say, I am being accountable to myself. What could I have done differently? What was my part in all of this? But if I can't see how I affected others, or I can't see something that someone else is not willing to have those accountability and feedback conversations with me on, I can't actually change it. I can't grow. I don't know what I don't know. And so there really is, if you can find someone who can have those hard conversations with you, and you set it up to where you have had this, like, this is how I receive feedback. This is what's important to me. This is how I process things. And you get those really strong relationships in your life, whether they're intimate people. I have some really great friends and coworkers who know how to give me feedback. They know and understand the way that I process. They know and understand these things about me. And so we've created this very vulnerable and tight circle of them holding me accountable and me being able to hear it and then grow from it. And so I highly, highly recommend that you have people in your life that can and will hold you accountable, that will ask you the tough questions, and that give you that perspective that you don't have today, that is going to grow and develop you. If you want to be at that next level, you can't always see around every corner that it takes to get there. But if you can find someone who's been there and can say, hey, have you thought about this? Are you looking at this? Do you know what's coming? Here's how you're showing up. And that's not where it's going to get you if you don't end up in this place or you don't think about this. That is the most valuable thing you can do for someone. And it truly is a gift in how you help them. It means I'm invested in you if I'm willing to have those hard conversations and do those things. Just like it's investment in yourself to be able to be accountable and to get a coach or to find someone else who can help give you unique perspectives about yourself. So that investment is invaluable for your growth and development.
Yeah. And again, it comes back just to being vulnerable, right? Like being vulnerable with letting someone give you that feedback and being like, okay, I'm going to take this with authenticity, and I'm going to take this with love and compassion towards myself, and I'm going to make something of it. Again, it just goes back to the biggest opportunity, right? So
Yes, it does.
yeah, amazing. Well, thank you
You.
so much, Michelle. This was such an incredible conversation. I'm so glad we were able to make this happen. And just before we get off, just please tell people where they can find you, how they can contact you, any work that you want to share, just anything that's been going on with you.
Yes, thank you. Definitely reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm Michelle Joy King. I'm on Instagram as Michelle Joy King as well. It would love to connect with leaders who are looking to do this work with their teams and themselves. Like, I think this is, we're going to breathe some new life into corporate America. There's a revolution happening now. And how do we do better? How do we avoid burnout? How do we empower leaders? And I'm really excited to be on this path with people like you who are doing the same work that's really going to transform our business and our lives.
Amazing. Okay, well, thank you so much, Michelle. And thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode. We will see you in the next one. All right, guys, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Higher Alignment Podcast. If you got something out of this episode, I would ask that you please go subscribe to the podcast so you never miss another episode, but also please go leave it a 5-star review so that it can find its way to other people who are having a hard time and need support. My mission in life is to help executives realize we don't need to suffer in silence while still performing at a high level. I want to help free people of the heavy pressure they carry on a day-to-day basis, and having more people listen to this podcast will do just that. So wherever you listen to your podcasts, like, subscribe, and please leave it a 5-star review, and we'll see you in the next episode.